Hello, good morning. I hope everybody can hear me. This is Bela Lazarus, and you should be in the Introduction to Media Mastery webinar. So the first thing I'm going to do is a little bit of housekeeping, and what I need to know first off is if there's going to be any problem in delays in people chatting. This can be a problem sometimes in webinars where you might post a question and it takes a bit of time for me to actually get the question. So here's what I'd like you to do. I'm going to ask you all in a moment to just put down a couple of words of what your industry is. So you can say lawyer, real estate, retail sales, life coach, whatever it is. And then I'm just going to time it to see how long it's going to take. And that'll give me an idea of how long I need to wait to get answers if I do ask a question. So I'd like you to do that right now. Just put in a couple of words to let me know what industry you're in. And if we're going to have a problem in terms of the amount of time it takes, thank you, Rob, for verifying that you can hear me. So if we're going to have a problem in how long the time it takes, I'm going to give you my cell phone to text a question to. That's going to be more instantaneous. Here we go. So that took, wow, about 30 seconds. Believe it or not, the first answer to my question came in 30 seconds after I asked it. So this can often be a source of frustration for people who have a question in response to something I'm saying right away, and it sounds or looks like I might be ignoring you. So if you do want to just text a question, I've just posted a little note there that has my cell phone, and I'm going to have my cell phone on and right beside me. That might actually be easier for some if you want a voice to text, and it could be faster that way. So, Manjeet, nothing is happening on your side. Can't hear the presentation. Okay, a few people having trouble with sound. So can you just give me a, I'd like everybody to give me a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being can hardly hear anything, 10 being loud and clear. So we'll see if it's on my end or your end. I did do a test with this yesterday, and it seemed like everything was okay. So it might be on your end of the computer. Manjeet, it looks like you might have pressed on a different link to get out of that page. As soon as you press on something, okay, Jasper, thank you. You've got good sound. Christine's got good sound. Okay, so I'm getting a bunch of 10s. Yeah, it might help if you get out of the page and then press the link again. And Taya, you hear me well. Excellent. Okay, so I will say you guys are a little bit of guinea pigs. It's the first time I'm trying Webinar Jam as opposed to GoToWebinar. Webinar Jam has been suggested to me, and if any of you are thinking of doing webinars and haven't tried yet, I'm certainly happy to answer questions by email afterwards in how to set this up. So what do we have here? We have project manager, vehicle leasing, hypnotherapist, utilities. Hey, Dennis, hello. Skincare. I see somebody says the internet. So Rob, I'm going to assume you're doing some sort of marketing, or are you tech on the internet? I'll keep an eye out for that. So why don't we just jump in, cost recovery, and yeah, get right into the show. I will be sharing my PowerPoint most of the time, but here and then I'm going to go off and share my browser and PDF so that we can get some other kind of information into the webinar. So A little bit about me. My name is Ayla Lazarus, as I said, and I have about 20 years experience in media. I started in television at CBC in Montreal, and I moved into radio, and then I worked in radio at CBC in Edmonton. And I came to Vancouver just to get some more experience, intending eventually to go back east, but once I came here, I loved it. So I stayed here and worked in radio and CBC. And then I went into print, so I became the writer and then an editor at the Jewish Independent I was there for about 7 years. And after that, did some freelance, and most recently spent about 7 years at Business in Vancouver, where I was the features editor. I did a lot of the proofreading there. If anybody needs some good proofreading help, let me know. And I was managing editor of several business newspapers. And while I was there, what you see in front of you on your screen is a sample of a press release that I received from Roger Killen. Some of you might know him. So he essentially sent me this for an event that he had where he was bringing together people from the Dragon's Den who would give advice on how to pitch. And I received this and I just thought, okay, this is kind of crazy, because I just didn't have time to read through all this information to find out what the key points were. Even when the event was happening was not clear, who was speaking, all the details that I really wanted to know as an editor. Now, I will just jump in with a caveat here. I do tend to talk about being an editor, but what I do and teach in my webinar is basically good for editors, producers, online publishers, because what I teach is about communication. But I will lapse into just saying the word editor every now and then. So I talked to Roger and I said, listen, this is really not a good pitch to send because there's too much text. So perhaps what I could do is rewrite it for you, and you can then send it off to different media outlets to pitch what you have to pitch, and then I'll use it as a really horrible example in my webinar. And so he agreed. Roger and I are still friends, and this is the revised pitch. So some of the things I'll point out that I did. At the top here, the subject line was very clear that it's an event. I say when the event is. That's important because there's a deadline now. So if I want to do a story on it, I can see that I have a deadline to send a reporter there. Then after that, just a big headline, media advisory and the date. This could go here or it could go up in the corner there. It doesn't really matter. It just helps to let me know that when the release was sent out. Contact very clear at the top. And then the news angles. This is something a lot of people don't think about, but it helps me to see exactly whether or not there's something in here for my media outlet. And when I talk to people, I suggest they list every kind of news angle that could possibly be pulled out as a story, even if it's not exactly what you hope will get covered. It's better if you put something in that might get covered as opposed to leaving it out. So this is clearly about small business, entrepreneurs, money sources, and so on. But I also added sustainability in there and marketing, because they are also part and parcel of what this event was about. Then a couple of paragraphs on what the event is, very short, just a couple of sentences. Then a list of the presenters, very clearly laid out, and the details of the event. I'll get into other examples of this, but I just wanted to point out right from the start what launched me in this goal to help entrepreneurs in terms of their media communication, because I know there are a lot of people, especially on the webinar today, they're solopreneurs trying to augment their knowledge in media relations, and they're kind of starting from scratch. And so we want to go from this to this. So today we're going to look at what editors, producers, and publishers will look for in a story. We're going to talk about how to write news releases and pitches that grab attention, and how to contact media so your emails get read. And by the way, I should just mention, if you do have a question that you're posting on the sidebar, if you click on question, it will actually display for me with a little icon of a question, and that will draw more attention than if you're just doing a chat. Also, if you click on administrator, that makes it private, and that way the rest of the people won't see what's out there. So let's start right off. What will I, as an editor or producer or publisher, look for in a story? One of the first things I really like to see are transferable lessons. So that means something that you can teach the readers or the viewers, something that's a takeaway. It's very valuable because the media outlet is basically there to serve its constituents, whether they are readers of a newspaper or the viewers for the television or listeners on radio. That's why they're there. So if you can provide transferable lessons to the media's constituents, in other words, who their market is, then that's really going to increase your chance of getting into the media. Following trends. We all love to read trend stories. They tend to have a lot of life in the media. They could start off with a news item and then follow up with several stories in different media. So if you can contribute to a trend in some way or connect your business to a trend, that's a really great opportunity to get in media. Overcoming challenges. If you can talk about something that happened in your life, whether it's personal or in business, that you overcame and directly contributed to the business. So if you had, let's say you overcame a disease, but somehow it enabled you to further your business or create a business. Let's say you broke with a partner in a business and it set you back, but then you came back, you rebounded, and you learned from that. So anytime you overcome challenges, that's also a very good story. If you have any advice, so advice columns are obviously really great. The 10 tips, the top 5s, those are always really great to see. If there's something new in your industry, now this is really important because editors have to consume a lot of information, and we're not always up on what the latest news is, whether they are bylaws or restrictions of some kind. So anything that you know that's going on in your industry, the editors or producers may not know about. So they may not even be looking for stories on it because they don't know that there's something new that's happened. So I suggest people not assume that the editors know, but pitch a story based on something new, and that makes it very timely. So it gives a good reason to cover the story at the moment. If there is an ongoing story in the media, can you contribute in some constructive way? Can you dispel rumors? Can you provide a different point of view? Those are all really great ways to add to an ongoing story. Do you solve somebody's problem? Now this you should all be familiar with because as business operators, you're out there to solve problems. So if you can tell the media outlet what problem it is that you solve and demonstrate that their readers or listeners would be interested in it, that's also a great way to get into the story. I see some people have lost audio and got it back. I will let you know this is being recorded, so you will be able to listen to this afterwards in case you missed anything. So here's some questions you can ask yourself to see if you've got something that's worthy of a story. What's new in your business? So I mentioned that if there are any bylaws or changes in trends in your business. Solutions to problems that you offer. And I suggest you take these and just list. Write them out and just list it so that you can see in front of you all the different possibilities of actually creating a story pitch. What have you learned from growing your business that you can use to help others? This is relevant especially for business publications who are putting in stories on business operations. So things to do with human resources, something that might have to do with tech, anything that has to do with business operations. If you're a retail outlet, did you have experience, problems, challenges, successes in finding a good location for your business? Anything like that that can be, again, a transferable lesson to other people would be very relevant for a story idea. Is there a trend or seasonal interest news item that you can connect your product or expertise to? By seasonal interest, I mean, is there anything that you can do connected to a time of year? So if people, for instance, Desiree of Aspen Clean produces cleaning products, so maybe there's a story around spring cleaning where you can suggest a column idea. If you are a retail outlet that has particular challenges or success hiring staff around Christmas time, maybe you can write a story about hiring staff for, you know, a temporary period of time, how you do it, strategies, top 10 tips, and things like that. So I generally talk about 5 different kinds of pitches. And this is important again because as far as I know, I'm the only one who's broken it down this way. A lot of PR people tend to just lump them all into press release or news release. And I like to break it down because each one deserves its own structure. So I won't get to all of these today. I do cover them all in my longer webinars and seminars, but we will try and get to at least the first 2 today and possibly the third. So the expert pitch, that's where you want to be seen as an expert in your field. You could be an expert as a business coach, an expert marketer. Taya, I know, does cold calling, so maybe she wants to be seen as the expert in cold calls. You could be an expert in a retail industry. Anything where you'd like to be seen as the expert in your field would be applicable for an expert pitch. So I'm just going to check a question. Is it a good idea to place the day of the week, Monday, Thursday, before the date of the event? I know it helps me by knowing the day of the week right off the bat, even before the date. So Dennis, I'm going to assume you mean in a news release type of pitch. Putting the day of the week in helps, doesn't take up much space. I don't say it's necessary, but it could be a good idea so that, especially if you're pitching to a weekly newspaper like Business in Vancouver, for example, every day of the week means something different. Like Thursday is a production day. Monday might be story day. So if I know what day of the week this event takes place, that will help me in terms of figuring out if I can assign an editor, a reporter to go cover it. So the next type of pitch on the list is known as a news release, a press release, or a media release. And this is basically an announcement of something happening. It could be a specific event. It could be a big change in your company. A merger and acquisition would warrant a press release. If a construction company or a developer has broken ground on a new development, that could warrant a press release. And these are sent out well in advance, either because the person who's sending it wants the media to give it coverage in advance, or they want the media to attend the event and cover it afterward. So you have to decide for yourself what's really relevant. Do you want media to cover the event beforehand, or do you want them to show up at the event? In my case, for example, I'm doing some press for TEDx. So for us, we want media to cover the event beforehand because we want to fill the auditorium. We also would like people to come at the same time when the event is taking place, so then they can report on it afterward, and then we can use that media coverage for next year when we're doing marketing. Third on the list is the story pitch. This is where you're suggesting a bigger story where there's probably the intention of you being interviewed and maybe 1 or 2 other people who are complementary to you being interviewed at the same time for the same story. A heads up pitch. This is something that doesn't have timeliness to it, but it's basically letting the media know that you're available should there be a story in the future that could use your expertise. So an example might be if you are a realtor and you have some really good knowledge of a particular region of the city. Let's say you do a lot of real estate in Surrey. So you could send a press release or a media story pitch to different publications and just let them know that you're available. And I do have examples of that coming up. I, as an editor, seeing that would probably file it based on your industry. And then if a story came up where I needed an expert comment, I would go find the email and give you a call. So that's the heads up pitch. And then the book pitch speaks for itself. You got a book, you're looking for a review or story coverage, or you want to be seen as an expert, and that has a specific pitch format as well. And all of these are available as free downloads. Samples of these are on my website. If you go under my website, under resources, free downloads, you will find PDF samples of all of these. So this is a good sample for the first one of expertise. This is the top of an email. So I'm going to present you John Doe Architect, and he gives a summary of what he does, or she. Well, in this case it's John, so it's a he. One sentence giving background information of who this person is. A big problem that a lot of people do when they put a pitch up is they have a lot of background information at the top. I like to see a very succinct line that gives me a clear understanding of who the person is. And in this case, you can see the content pitch is directly for a specific magazine and a specific issue. And that's really important because that tells me that John has been reading my media, so he understands what I might be looking for. And his pitch is going to be relevant for that particular publication. Here in the body of the email, he gives me an idea of the subjects that he might be able to be interviewed about, write a guest blog. So you could use these pitches for internet blogs if you want to do a guest blog on somebody else's blog post. He has 4 topics here that he's suggesting, and then underneath the news hooks. The reason it's really important to try and pull out news hooks is because if I just see this, in other words, I just see the subjects that he's interested in talking about, I might file away this pitch to get to later, but if a story doesn't come up that's relevant, I might not actually come back to it. But if John tells me, here are some timely reasons to actually do the story now, I'll be more likely to just turn around and basically get an interview with them. Especially here in the second point, there's a new amendment to a real estate bylaw. So as an editor, I want to get onto that very quickly. If a bylaw comes out in January, I don't want to be covering it in September. So anything that can be timely as a news hook or a trend is really good to help the editor or producer turn around quite quickly to do the story. And then at the bottom, I have high-res images of myself standing in front of my buildings. So this tells me that there are photos available. This is important for a few reasons. Number one, I don't have to email him and ask him if he's got photos. Number two, I wouldn't have to use a photographer to go out and take pictures, so that way I can conserve my resources. And number three, the fact that he says they are high res and they're available means that if I need something very quickly, like if I decide at the last minute that I want to interview this guy, let's say I only have 24 hours to put the story together, he's already got the images. I know I'm not going to waste time trying to get them. So I'll have the interview and the images within 24 hours. Very important. And then 24/7, I can be contacted 24/7 at my cell number. This is important because a lot of reporters do stay after hours to do their interviews. Very often they're there at 6 o'clock trying to finish up interviews for a story. If they know that this is a cell number, then they know that you're going to be available, and they're not going to get an office number. And then at the very bottom, if there is background that you want to put in, a lot of people like to talk about why they started their business, what got them interested, what they're passionate about. Put it down here. Don't put it too high up, because this is the place that I want to read it. Once I get past the other things here and I say, okay, this is an interesting story, then I'll go and read more about it. So this is a sample experts pitch for a very specific column called Ask the Experts, and this is in Business in Vancouver. And I pull this up because quite a few people come up to me wanting to know how to get into this specific column. And it actually, this format can be used for any type of experts column. They usually have different titles. BC Business has its own title for its experts column. In Business in Vancouver, it's called Ask the Experts. So you could take this and just fill all that in and send it to the person who edits that particular page. Tyler Orton is the name of the person. If you pick up a copy of Business in Vancouver and you just turn to the page, sorry, I'm just reading Dennis, typo on cell. Oh, okay, thanks, Dennis. So Tyler Orton's name and email will be at the bottom of that page in Business in Vancouver. If you go onto BIV's website, there is a contact list. Generally, the editors and reporters at Business in Vancouver, it's their first initial and last name at BIV.com. So it would be T Orton, O-R-T-O-N, at BIV.com. And you would send him this pitch. And something to know about this column, this is not the only thing Tyler does. I used to sit across from the reporter who used to put together the Ask the Experts column. It wasn't Tyler at the time, it was somebody else. And that reporter, his main beat was actually resources. And he was doing the Ask the Experts column on the side. That's a lot of work to do. If you think about every week, this reporter had to find a good question to put in Ask the Experts and 3 people to respond. So that's 150 people a year that he had to find. He was constantly asking me for suggestions for questions and suggestions for people. So if you can provide a pitch that has all those answers wrapped up in a nice package, he is going to love you. So, dear, in this case, it would be Tyler. I'd like to contribute to Ask the Experts section. One line of what the area of expertise is. In this case, this was one of my clients, Andrew Sipe, who's a consultant, and he works primarily with email marketing. So here are the problems that he helps solve. You can put this in different ways. You could say, here are some topics that I can write about. You know, here are subjects that I write columns on, or these are the subjects of my blog. But 3 or 4 points on what the topics can be. And then an example of a question. So in Ask the Experts, they always have a question at the top of the page. So he gives an example of a question that he can answer. And then under this particular question, here are the specifics that he would like to get into. So Tyler will then look at that and say, well, maybe they've done something similar and he wants to tweak it a bit, or this might be quite fresh. But it gives an idea of what's going to be in that column. It's generally not enough just to give a title or even a topic. You want to break it down and say, here are 3 points that I'm going to cover in the column. And then Andrew suggests that he has names of other participants that he can find and give those contacts to Tyler. So Tyler doesn't even have to do the searching for the other people for that column, because as I mentioned, they always have 3 experts. Then Andrew says he has a high-res headshot available. Very important again, because when magazines or newspapers put in columns, they will very often need to have a photograph. So in the case of Ask the Experts, no photo, no column. And then again, you can contact me on my cell phone. So there he is. After using my format for the pitch, there's Andrew in the middle. And this is how the question was worded, why email marketing still pays off. He found these other two people, Steve Dotto, and I don't remember the guy on the right's name, who looks like Jerry Seinfeld. But Andrew actually found these other two people and gave those contacts to Tyler. And there he is. This is the online version. He also appeared in the print version. And I'm guessing it probably took him a total of 1 hour of work to fill out that pitch and to find the contacts. These were people he knew anyway, because in your industry, you're going to know other people who can respond to the same question. And don't worry too much if they're competitors. So there are 3 people who can answer questions. You know, people are going to see you as an expert in your field. If you can get a complimentary person who's not a competitor, that's great, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. Now we're going to go into the style of press release. This is what I mentioned, also called a news release, media release. This is when you have an event. Now, this is what you're going to see if you go into my website. This is the download. So this is what you're going to see at the top. This is just explanation of what the subject line could be. Kim, does Tyler Orton use the experts over and over, or does he constantly want new experts? New experts. I think there was about a 6-month minimum turnaround before Tyler would use an expert again. So he always wants fresh experts. That's a really good point, Kim, because media really wants new faces and new people and new opinions and new angles. They will have their standard consultants that they go to. So Business in Vancouver has a marketing consultant and a branding consultant. And those people might put in a column once a month, but they also have lots of space for new people to come in and fresh faces. That's exactly what media is looking for, whether it's television, online, or magazines. So if you can present yourself with a fresh angle, offer them, you know, intelligent responses, intelligent ideas, they will go for it, because the idea is to get fresh faces in the media. So as I mentioned, this is just going to be an explanation for you to figure out what your subject line is going to be. So here's example: Prince of India to visit Surrey, new floating restaurant opens in English Bay, Vancouver Aquarium completes 64 million renovation. So this is an example of what's happening. Another possible subject line could be a point taken from some new material. So housing prices hit record high. So this could be a realtor submitting an expert column on housing prices. Small businesses hit hardest by recession, according to survey. New liquor laws might increase car fatalities. So this is something that's new, that's happening in the industry. It's not so much an event, but it's new material that has come out in the industry. And so you would basically pitch according to, you know, what you're going to contribute. It might be an expert column or a story idea, or you just want them to know that there's an event coming. So for immediate release, this is important in a news release because sometimes the person pitching does not want information in the media until a certain date. So this most often happens when the budget comes out. I don't think you probably have to worry about this, but it is good to know that if you don't want, if you're launching a new product, for example, there might be a specific date before which you don't want information to leak out. So if you put embargoed until, that means that the media will not put it in their publications or on air until that particular date. You're then going to put a headline, 2 or 3 sentences of what's going to happen. And as I showed you earlier, list all the possible story angles. So covering an event in and of itself may not be enough. It just might not be interesting just to go out and cover an event for different types of media. They need the story angles that are relevant to them. Important points. So if it's an event, why is it unique? Maybe a little bit of background showing what led up to the event, a very little bit. If there's more background, you could put that at the bottom. Write in full sentences, but keep it in bullet point. If it is a survey, you want to list the most important and interesting outcomes of the survey. And then what you're offering. So do you just want to let the media know that you're out there in case they want an interview? Do you want to write a column? If it's a report, are you going to do a review of the report? You know, in many industries, reports come out through your associations that you might look at and say, oh, nobody's going to be interested, but it could be an interesting story for the media. And very often, if a particular industry isn't covered that well, it could just be a unique way to, you know, pitch a story. So I was working with a client at Mentorship BC, and she came across a report that had come out in January about mentoring, who uses mentoring, what the successes are. And at first she just thought, well, you know, it's not really earth-shattering, but it was a really good angle to pitch the story on. And if there is a report, you want to make sure you do it, I'd say within a month or two, at least. So try to do it right away, but if you find a report that is a couple of months old, you can still pitch it. Then at the bottom, for all information, high-res images, and you can contact media contact there. So here's an example of a bad press release. This was something I actually received in January. This is for the wellness show. You could see right up the top, huge amount of text describing what the wellness show is. This came from a professional PR company, which kind of shocked me. Another paragraph in here, which basically just gives some information about the stages, then something about kids, and then the dates and times all in a big paragraph here. So before I go on to the reformatting, I see a couple of questions. According to Webinar Jam, warren@bwi.ca isn't a valid email address. Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay, so if I'm just going to do a quick response. If you'll excuse me, I need to just respond here. All right, let's get back to this. So here is the rewritten release. I basically just did this as an example for us today. So the wellness show, a couple of sentences right there. Actually, I think this is just 2 sentences. It's a wellness show. I think we're pretty clear on what that entails. So you don't need a huge amount of paragraph. Story angles pulled out here. Really important, because I found things through that when I went through it closely, like sustainability and social media, that I wouldn't normally have thought might be a good angle and tech as part of a wellness show. One line in point 4, 300 exhibitors, 5 demonstration stages. So what she had put into a whole paragraph, I basically brought down into 1 line. Now, here are some good titles. These are pulled out of some of the subjects in there. Titles are really great because they give a succinct idea on what the topic is, and also makes it a bit easier for the recipient editor to envision the final piece. And they kind of draw attention if they're a little bit, you know, titillating, I guess. So why apples are part of the dirty dozen and what you should do about it. That piques my curiosity, like, what do you mean dirty dozen? So I might respond just to find out what she's talking about there. Green do-it-yourself products. So this tells me there's a sustainability column that might work. What is alkaline water? Why coconut water is the new Coke? So these are things that draw my attention. They enable me to imagine the final piece. And, you know, they provoke some curiosity. Then again, another couple of sentences. This is summarizing the play area and the stages. And then the show details. In a list, previously, she had them in this whole paragraph here, which is obviously a bit harder to read. This list gives me a really clear idea of when it's happening, whether I want to send somebody to cover it at the time, and also if I want to put information in my media outlet about the times and the prices, it's very clear right there. So now we're going to talk about contacting media. How do you contact media so they're going to open your email? We're going to launch into the media kits, also called editorial or content calendar. So I'm going to launch out of here for 1 second. So you're going to see some weird stuff on the screen because I'm going to share. Find my Okay, so this is an example of an editorial calendar for Vitamin Daily. This is a consumer site that provides information on health and wellness, fashion, food. I think they do home decor, it's lifestyle. So if you have any kind of consumer products, this is a good place to see what the editor is looking for. So an example I mentioned earlier for Aspen Clean here in March, there was a section on spring cleaning. So that might, well, it's too late now, but for next year, consider pitching probably in January, maybe a column idea for spring cleaning for their March section. You can also, this is the entire list of going to publish over 2015. If you have a new product that has come out that could be relevant to you know, a lifestyle magazine, maybe it can go in here, our favorite things. So they don't know about your product if you don't tell them about it. And if you tell them about it, they might be very interested in putting it in there. So get in and look at their information online and find out what kind of material they look for, and then get the editorial calendar. And I'm going to show you where to find that in a moment if I can get Webinar Jam working for me. See if there's anything else here. As I mentioned, fashion picks. If you're in the fashion industry, this is a good place to pitch fashion ideas. So just have a look through, and this is also, PDF is also available on my website. I've put up a whole bunch of editorial or content planners that people can look at. This is for BIV magazines. Oh, I'm just going to check on questions here. Okay, everything good there. So, Business in Vancouver produces a dozen or so magazines every year. They are annuals, and each one has a particular focus. So this is their editorial calendar for their magazines. And the reason I bring this out is if you have anything in tech, a lot of people that I speak with have some, could be experts in tech. If you deal with office space of any kind, maybe refurnishing, or if you're an ergonomist specialist, or if you deal on the psychological effects of being in an office that has no windows, anything to do with office space, you might be able to pitch a column or a story. And then in particular, I think Kim might be interested in this, and that is Meeting Places magazine. So Meeting Places is a magazine published at the end of the year. It comes out in January. So for 2015, they're going to be working in October on the 2016 issue. And this is anything to do with meetings, events, conventions, hotel accommodations, anything like that. So if you have expertise in the events planning industry, you can pitch a column to them if you have a new angle or a story. And one good way to go about it is to just think up the top 10 questions that your clients ask you and think about how maybe the top 5 you could write a column or be interviewed on. And then you would pitch the editor of this magazine. And I'll tell you, for magazines, you want to pitch 6 months in advance. So probably starting next month, you can pitch Frank O'Brien, that's the person who edits that magazine, and just in the subject line, you would say Meeting Places, story idea, event planner. That's it. That way it goes to the right person. The person who edits that magazine will get it. They will understand that it goes for that particular magazine. They know what the topic is, and that's what's going to get them to open the email. Because you have to get past their inbox, and that's based on the subject line. So knowing exactly who you're pitching to and what particular section or publication is the first way to get them to open the email. And then you can pitch a column idea, use that expert column format to pitch different titles for columns, tell them what the latest news is, trends, whatever it is. Use that expert column pitch. Or you can use a story pitch and suggest maybe 1 or 2 other people who could complement you in talking about a particular topic in event planning. And I used to edit this magazine, and honestly, every year we try and find fresh ideas, and it's very hard in the event planning industry. We feel like we've done them all. So if you can present something new, they'll love you for it. And then the last one I want to look at, oh, we don't have that here. 1 second. I want to try to find my business in Vancouver. Actually, we will go back to screen share. Hello. Okay, you probably have a blank screen here because it's not screen sharing for me. There we go. And back to my PowerPoint. All right, hopefully you got that there. You do, good. And this is an example of Business in Vancouver's content calendar. I've blown it up here. Things that are coming up. What you want to do is look under the focus sections there. Those are the sections where it's probably the easiest way to get in based on a particular topic. And coming up in July, there's a human resources quarterly. So if you have any expertise in hiring or firing or maintaining staff, staff retention is a really big topic because we know that it takes less money to keep staff than to hire new staff. So if you have an expertise in that area, you could pitch to this particular section. And again, in the subject line, you would put human resources, column idea, or human resources quarterly, column idea, or story idea. Below that, hospitality and tourism. Oh, there's small business up here as well. So these are the sections you want to look at. And if you pitch directly to that section, it's basically you giving the editor a message. I know what's coming up. I'm familiar with your publication. I have something that will help you fill that that particular section. I'm basically here to help you. And it's the same thing as when you're working with a client. You want to understand the client and know how you can solve their problem. And in this case, the editor's problem is filling that section with very topic relevant stories or columns. So now I'm going to try one more time to get into, see if I can screen share to show you where to find these. Seem to be having, all right. So just bear with me as I screen share my desktop. Okay, we're going to go in here. It's going to look very, very weird, but hopefully, let's see if this works. Okay, I don't think this is going to work because I can't screen share my browser. So we'll go back. But hopefully you're getting a lot of entertainment out of seeing all these bizarre images pop up on your screen. So then I'll just have to discuss it. When you go into a browser window onto somebody's website to look for these kinds of content calendars, you want to start by looking for the advertise link, because these editorial calendars are set up between the advertisers and the editorial department. They come up with these special sections, and between them they decide what kind of sections they're going to have for the entire year. So generally, if you click on the advertise button, you'll be able to find exactly where the media kit is. These are not kept secret. If you can't find it, contact the advertising department or the marketing department and ask them for their content calendar or editorial calendar. They actually want people to have it because their goal is to sell ads. You don't have to buy an ad to get the calendar, but as I mentioned, it's just that they're available for everybody to use. Okay, so some key points in writing a pitch. Identify the publications that you're submitting the pitch for. Write in bullet point. Make sure you connect what you have in terms of a topic with what they need, and submit it well in advance. I don't have time to get into the actual, length of periods and how long in advance you should send for different types of media. So I do go over that in my longer webinars, but I won't have time today. Sample subject lines, again, identify the section and what you're offering. So small business section, marketing column, new trend in flat shoes, expert available, 6 words maximum. Bad subject line, I use this as an example because I got this just today. It's like, oh my God, Easter is 2 weeks away. So what? Tell me what the relevant point is and connect it to my media outlet. Or if you're not sure, if you're sending out a mass email and you don't know exactly who's receiving it, put a little bit more information here. Easter, it's 2 weeks away, does not tell me anything about what the story pitch is. Some of the mistakes, as I just showed you, the subject line is too long or vague, too much background or extraneous material high up, not written in succinct bullet point. So we've gone over most of this, and submitted too close to or past the deadline. Media page or LinkedIn profile. So I'm going to just touch on this because a lot of people overlook it, but I won't have time to go into depth. But if you could, in your LinkedIn profile or media page, you want to make it very clear what you do. So that when I get on to your website, if I've opened your email and I want to know more about you, somewhere it should be very clear what you do, what you can offer media. If you've been in media before, if you have any pre-written columns that can be used, that's important. If you have an expertise and I might want to use a column that you have offered, I want to be able to download it and use it right away, just in case I need to fill something last minute without getting in touch with you. So make that very clear on your media page. Sample storylines, column ideas, titles, and so on. You want to have the topics that you can cover. Suggested column titles really help, as I showed you in that press release for the wellness show. Make sure that these are grouped together so that it's very clear what you can offer, and then your contact information with a spelling mistake in the word cell. So I'm going to just go over a little bit of what I have coming up, because I did mention a few things that I go over in my longer webinar, and this is exactly coming up next week on April 1st. So I'm going to review some of these materials and have more tips that I haven't had a chance to put in today. We'll talk about the heads up pitch, which I didn't talk about, book pitches. I will go over how far in advance that you should pitch, and as well a whole lot of other information. If you go on to phase2coaching.com and click on the Media Mastery link under workshops, you'll see a whole page of information that I go over. It's going to be next Wednesday, April 1st, from 1 to 4. Now, the webinar is 1 to 4, but I am actually going to be in Small Business BC doing the webinar. And when the webinar closes at 4 p.m., I'm going to be there till 4:30. So you have the option of signing up to be in person. There are only 16 seats at Small Business BC. But if you are in person, I'll be in there an extra half hour and answer questions that can be more specific to your actual industry. I'm just going to hopefully display the pop-in. I don't know if the pop-in has showed up. If somebody can let me know if the pop-in has showed up. Hang on, I'm just trying to, because I've got a link here. And it's not working. Okay, there we go. I think that worked. So what I'm offering for today is, if you go to the link, I think I've provided the link in that pop-in, to Eventbrite and enter the code GRADUATE, you will get $50 off. $97. It's a 3-hour webinar, or 3.5 hours in person. I guarantee you're going to get your money's worth, because we'll go more into detail about writing the pitches, and I'll have a lot more time to answer questions. So speaking of which, if you do have any more questions you want to ask, I see it's all popping up. Okay, good. You've all got to see that. Keep in mind, as you did with today's webinar, once you buy an Eventbrite ticket, you'll get an email telling you to log into the webinar, because you'll need a separate link. So keep in mind that getting the Eventbrite ticket is just the first step. And here's another offer that I've decided to throw in. If you suggest somebody else to come along as well and sign up, if you've got somebody else to go on the webinar or come with you to the event, you'll get another $20 off your ticket. I'm feeling very generous today. Everything has gone well. Nothing has severely crashed, and it looks like everybody has had some good value out of today. So I hope you'll see that on a 3-hour webinar, you'll get a lot more details. So that's pretty much it for me today. If you do have any follow-up questions, you can send them to Bela@phase2coaching.com. This was, as I said, my first attempt with Webinar Jam, so I would really welcome, any kind of responses or advice or comments on how the webinar went technically for you. If you did have problems, I would like to send them into the support team to let them know. So thank you. Well done. Fabulous information. Thank you very much. Everybody good. Have a great day, everybody, and hopefully I will see you next week. Take care.